see if it's going live. It needs to catch first. Yes, now I need to do the magic. And we are gonna go live in a few seconds. Let me check. Allow embedding. Save. Let me do the magic so we can see it in our platform. Well, Bitcoin is pumping today.
Yeah.
116,887. So it's October is finally doing great.
Yeah, well, this is what it does. This is what it does. It's exciting to think about what the future is going to hold. Anyway.
Yes. Now everything is working. We are ready to go live, and we are live. Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Andy. Andy is also known as SatsCoach, a passionate advocate for health, sports, and mental well-being through the lens of Bitcoin. With a background in consulting to help individuals level up their lives, SatsCoach combines practical advice on fitness and mindset with the revolutionary potential of Bitcoin to foster true independence. From critiquing modern politics to celebrating Christian resilience, he's a voice for progress in a chaotic world. Today, we will talk about how following a Bitcoin standard helps in mental and physical health. Andy, welcome.
Thank you very much for that introduction. That was impressive. Thank you for that.
The introduction, I have to say that the introduction is one of the signatures of my show. I try to do a proper introduction for my guests, and most of them, probably 80%, they tell me great introduction, and that's I'm proud of that. So that's the.
Oh well, you certainly did it justice. Anyway, you certainly did it justice, Fernando.
So Andy, let's go to the first question. The first question that I do to everyone is, how were you orange pilled?
How what? Sorry.
How were you orange pilled?
How
you arrived to
Bitcoin? Right. Okay, orange pilled. Sorry. Yeah. I first came across Bitcoin back in 2016, 17. I can't remember the exact moment that I came across it, but once I saw, I think I saw something online about it, and I was immediately interested because I was going through a phase in my life where I was looking at best ways to save. I was a young father. I started having my own family, and looking at best way to save, and looking around at all the products that were available in terms of savings. One thing, I was underwhelmed by the returns that were potentially on offer, other than your standard sort of stock market S&P 500 investment. So I was looking around to see for where you could get better returns on your money, and if there was indeed any sort of better ways of investing your money, whether it was real estate or whether it was into gold, precious metals, all those usual places that people go. And I came across Bitcoin, and I was intrigued by the concept of Bitcoin in the first instance, when the idea of being able to move value across the internet without having any sort of banking intermediary. That was my first sort of thing. I thought that's potentially got something. At this point, I didn't really know how workable Bitcoin was at that point, but it was something that certainly perked my interest. So I spent quite a lot of hours reading up, and I think for those that are on here that obviously follow Michael Saylor as I do quite closely, you do go through. I went through those stages that he talks about when you first go into it. You're very skeptical, which, to be fair, if you're not skeptical, that's probably not a great way to approach anything. If you're not skeptical first. In terms of whether it was actually a workable thing, and making sure that it sort of wasn't anything that was going to be scammy or going to release you of your money without getting anything back, which we did go through a few phases of that in early Bitcoin, where there was lots of people and offering things that weren't legitimate what they were actually offering. So I went through that. I sort of did a bit of a deep dive into sort of literature, again referencing sort of a classic that most Bitcoiners go to around the Bitcoin standard. I read that book and listened to that book a couple of times over, because it is quite heavy on the history. But I think the history is an important part of it, and the whole Bitcoin journey going forward into the future. The history of it is actually a vital part of the use case for Bitcoin going forward. Mainly because we've gone through many different generations over the past like hundreds of years around money and around transferring value, etc. And none of them have succeeded to the way that I believe that Bitcoin can do, for the obvious reasons that people state, things like confiscation, fraudulent activity, being able to actually move it, the logistics of moving it, the cost of moving it, all those sort of things that come out from the discussions around Bitcoin. And again, I think, like I said, I don't think there's anyone better than Michael Saylor for articulating it. So yeah, that was how I got into it, and I played around with it around 2017. I bought some Bitcoin, my first Bitcoin. I still don't think I fully understood it at that point, in all honesty, which I don't think is that uncommon for a lot of people who got into Bitcoin back then. As with anything new, I suppose it's similar to like the internet. People were a bit umming and ahhing about email and so on. And I think Bitcoin's going through the same process. And I bought Bitcoin at 2017, sold a little bit probably around 2018, 2019, after making a little bit of profit on it. Nothing spectacular, but making some profit on it. But then over the years, the more that I've seen, and it's not just because Bitcoin has been going up every year that it's sort of made me more bullish. It's more that I'm actually more bullish around what Bitcoin actually does and its ability to do what it does. I think that's what sets it apart for me. And the sort of the question marks that hung over it, there's a lot of question marks maybe around Satoshi, who Satoshi is, who are Satoshi in the early days, and what would they do with their sort of stake of Bitcoin that they own in their wallet. But I think with the amount of time that's gone past and the opportunities that could have been there for people to take huge profits, I don't see that. I actually believe that to be legitimate now. It is actually a gift to the system. I don't believe that there is somebody on the other end of it ready to take the coins off and take however many billion it's worth now. I think they would have done that a lot sooner.
Yes, totally. And one of the things that you mentioned is that when you read the Bitcoin Standard, that for me is one of the best economic books of the history, not even a Bitcoin book. It's one of the best economy books in history. You said that at the beginning it's very hard to read because it goes through the story of money. What do you think that is the biggest problem for people when trying to understand Bitcoin? The history of money, the problem that money causes, on the technology of Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I think it's probably a bit of all of those. I think for some people, like for myself, I don't come from a finance background. I come, as you can probably tell, I come from a sporting background, and football and fitness sort of background. So finance wasn't something that I studied in any great detail up until the point of really having children. I just used money like most citizens do as a medium of exchange to buy goods and services. However, I think also the technology of Bitcoin, I think in the early days for a lot of people, especially if they've not the younger end and the younger generation that are being brought up on technology, computers, mobile phones, coding, all these different things that, I mean, my generation, I never did coding. Coding was after me, or it was very much in its infancy when I was younger. I think the younger generation are a lot more attuned to being able to deal with the things that come with coding, and probably have a little bit more understanding and belief in something that can work online. Whereas for us before that, it was very much a physical transaction, whether it be through paper notes or gold coins. I think we never really had that experience prior to the younger generation that are coming through now.
Yes, and when you start talking with your family, because you told me that at that time you were a young father, you have kids, I assume you had your wife, you have your family, your friends. When you start talking to your family about Bitcoin and your friends about Bitcoin, what do they start saying? They try to pursue that was a scam, or they were like, oh, they were pushing to understand it.
Yeah, well, obviously early on when I first talked about Bitcoin, people would be looking at me like going, "What is that? What are you actually talking about? What is Bitcoin? Never heard of it in my life. Like, did have no idea." And I've tried speaking to my wife a few times about it. She's still not 100% on board, if I'm being deadly honest. She's still not quite sure about it. The idea of having something on your phone and on the laptop that represents your sort of asset worth, I suppose is the best way of putting it. She's still not 100% convinced by it, and still does have a slight bit of worry about it. With us not being in the sort of the traditional finance regulatory framework where there's supposed insurances and so on to look after your money should things go south, as they say. But I've also had the opposite of that. Like my close group of friends that I grew up with at school. We went on a holiday just over a year ago, and actually, whilst we were on holiday just around the pool, I had quite a lot of questions from my friends asking me about it. So I'm not one for trying to push things on people. I think that's not the way to go. If you want people to really engage and adopt into something new, I think you've got to be more of just a source of information and being able to redirect them to sources of information and let them make their own mind up about it. Especially when it's got value and people's potential savings and so on involved. You don't want to be pushing down something and then them needing the money, and Bitcoin's had a bit of a dip and they're all of a sudden they're coming at you saying my money's gone. So you don't really want that on your conscience either. So you do have to make them aware that obviously Bitcoin is very different than your traditional sort of pound or dollar in terms of its volatility. But the other side to that is that if you can zoom out and you've got the ability to zoom out on your time frame, you start to look at the picture of the dollar and the pound and the way that that's gone. And currencies in general over history, as this Bitcoin standard lays out, is that they don't tend to trend upwards; they tend to trend downwards, purely because of the sort of financial levers that are in place for being able to print more pounds, more dollars into the circulation, and what impact that has on everybody's assets. And that's kind of the way I tried to frame Bitcoin when I had the conversation with my friends, was look at the house that you live in, look at what it was worth when you bought it, and look at what it's worth now. Even if you've done nothing to the house in terms to add value to it, whether you put an extension on it or whatever it is, your house has gone up probably nearly 40% in the last sort of 7 or 8 years. That didn't happen just by magic because we just decided. It's because of inflation. Inflation affects and touches everything across the board. And it's like when you go to the supermarket now. I mean, our British government will tell you inflation's at one particular percentage. But if you go and look at your local food shop that you do every week, that's certainly not reflected in a local food shop for the average family.
Do you think that how is the inflation problem in the UK now? Because I think that for example, for us, I'm from Argentina. We are not only the world champions in football, we are also the world champions on inflation. So for us, it's very easy to see the effects of inflation. But I think that for the first world countries, the first world economies like US, UK, even here in Hong Kong, the effect of inflation is a little bit difficult to see because it's like a little bit. But I think that in the last years, the inflation spiked and you are starting to notice that, right?
Yeah, well, as you say, places like your home country, Argentina and Venezuela, and some of the other South American countries are acutely aware of what hyperinflation looks like. So they've experienced that and how detrimental that can be to your society. As you say, with Britain and the dollar in the US, and as you say, potentially sort of like the euro and the Japanese yen, a little bit more subtle. But I think when COVID happened, the sheer volume of money that they printed during that time, I don't think they could hide it in the way that they have done historically over the years, just purely because of the volume of dilution that they put into the system, which is now kind of, it's still very much apparent in UK, very much apparent. I mean, if you go in, like I say, if you go in your local food supermarket and you look at that pre-COVID to what people are paying now, it's still way above. It's nearly, probably, I would say, 30 to 40% above what you would have been paying for your average food shop prior to COVID. So we're still definitely feeling the effects of that. And for us in America to sort of have had the actual spike of inflation it had, it just shows how significant the printing was during COVID, because they're huge economies.
Yes, I think that when you see, for example, the M2, the global M2 and the United States M2 supplies, that the money that is circulating, you see that it's going up, and then during the COVID, it's vertical. Yeah. So these things are not free. Someone has to pay, and it's being paid by all the people with the inflation tax, because at the end of the day, inflation is another tax, a tax that you cannot evade. And people is like struggling with inflation. This start triggering some kind of looking for another way of saving money, like Bitcoin, gold, or other solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that historically, I mean, you look back at sort of like the 2008 housing crisis that we had, when I think it was Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers, when they went bust. That again was people with wealth. They flee to the assets where there's some security for them, which historically had been gold and silver to a degree, primarily gold, for that very reason, just to deal with those things.
Yes, and also I listen from my friends. I've been in UK for last time in 2012 during the Olympic Games. I've been the whole month in London, and I had a short trip to Manchester because I went to the Olympics, and my two dreams were going to see a match of tennis in Wimbledon, in the central court of Wimbledon that I watched. And another dream was to watch a match in the Old Trafford that I went. So I went from London to Manchester, watched the match in the Old Trafford, and came back. So that was my last time. But many of my friends that visited UK or live in the UK, they say that the quality of living is getting worse. The crime is spiking. There are a lot of troubles. Do you think that this is connected with the broken money that is happening now?
Yeah, I think it's like a cascading effect. I think if you've got broken money in society in general, that creates downstream problems, and certainly it's put pressure on people. So people that are maybe in sort of lower income areas of the UK, and this will apply to other countries, I'm sure, is when you are put under a lot of financial pressures, people will do things to try and alleviate the pressures that are on them, or do things that they wouldn't normally have to do, to try and make their families have the most basic things. So whether that's going to the shop and taking something from a shop, which obviously is illegal and should be punished accordingly if you're caught, but you have to understand that some of the people that are doing it are doing it purely because they are being put under monetary pressure for their basic living needs, to go and maybe act in some of these circumstances. I'm not saying that applies to everybody, because as we know, there's people out there that are not particularly good people and will commit crime whether they've got money or not got money. This is just human beings, unfortunately. So I think there's certainly an element of that. But I mean, the UK is still a great country. It's still a great place to live. I mean, I try and say you've always got to try and put things in perspective. I mean, they say that the average sort of working salary is at sort of around the sort of 25 to 30,000 pound a year mark, which, if you compare that actually globally, still puts you in about the top 1% of the global salary earning. So although it might seem like it's a poor way of living here, you're actually comparatively okay compared to a lot of many other nations that are out there. So I think the UK is still a great country, and it's still certainly got a lot to offer. But I can't sit here and deny that there's not problems. There certainly is. There's certainly problems from a political standpoint in the country in terms of decisions that they're taking. I mean, obviously during COVID, we took the decision to print all the money that we printed for COVID, which I don't know how closely you followed that, but there's been a lot of issues around fraud, especially around some of the sort of like COVID loans that are being given by government to people, businesses making up businesses. I mean, I think there was one story recently last week about how there was a company or persons in Poland that were filtering British COVID loans into Poland somehow. However you would do that, I'm not too sure, but it's been a problem. And the sort of, I think it was Rishi Sunak who was in power at the time, and they were basically, just before he became the Prime Minister, he was talking about how they'd lost £3 to £4 billion in COVID loans. They couldn't trace them. 3 to 4 billion, not million, billion. Which I don't know any other job on the history of the world or on the planet where you can lose 3 to 4 billion pounds of other people's money and get promoted. He ended up being the Prime Minister on the back of it, which for me, I was just like, wow, that just shows you how disconnected the methods and the systems that are in place are in terms of morality. Because if I went and took £10 from a business, I would lose my job. I wouldn't get a promotion. I wouldn't get a promotion. But to lose 3 to 4 billion and say that we can't retrieve it, we can't trace it, is for me, it's absolutely it's an outrageous mistake, really.
And how is the situation now? Because I heard something related to the digital ID. I heard this from Vietnam, that people they closed their accounts because they didn't want the digital ID. And I saw something similar happening in the UK, but I didn't go in deep. So better for you to explain.
Well, I would say, Fernando, I'm certainly not an expert on it. I'm certainly not going to sit here and claim I'm an expert on it. However, the old concept of a digital ID, I think it's like with everything. There's an argument there where you could potentially see benefits of it. However, as with everything that might have potential benefit, there's also potential drawbacks and problems that come with it. And I think it's a case of weighing up, are the benefits outweighing the problems that come with it. And from what I've seen and what I've read, I would say that it would be a more detrimental thing to personal freedoms and personal liberty, and also the right to secrecy for individual citizens of the country, more so than a benefit to the citizens of the country. I don't see any reason why we need to have a digital ID. The country has functioned for years and years without a digital ID. I don't see why now it would be important to have one. The claim that I saw, I think, of the current government was around, it'll help them track people, and it'll help them sort of get people that have maybe come into the country illegally, and sort of get them back to where the countries where they should do, and not be not essentially be in our system, claiming the sort of welfare and the benefits that they get, claiming alleged asylum, which is it's a topical one in our country. It's like if you've got one particular version of it, no matter how articulate you put yourself, you sort of classified as one type of person, and if you've got a vision on something else, you're classified as another type of person. There's no room for middle ground or compromise or sort of logic, which I suppose is the current climate for politics in general. Everyone's trying to sort of red team, blue team everybody.
Yes, yes. And let's move to your job, because you are a coach. You are a personal trainer or a sports coach.
Yeah, so my background primarily is through football. I know you were saying you was at Old Trafford and what have you. So in a sort of a separate capacity away from the sports coach online, I work with football players. So I do coaching with football players, varying age groups as well. So I work with some up and coming younger talents, and then I also work with some adults that are already playing in sort of professional or semi-professional games, some of them as well. But I also do fitness training for private clients that are looking to sort of make improvements, whether they're already training currently and they're looking to find an edge, or whether it's somebody who is currently not trained for a period of time and is looking to get into training and trying to get themselves into better physical shape and better mental shape, to try and just basically improve their general lifestyle and their health for the future. And
do you talk about Bitcoin with them,
yeah, I do. I do talk about Bitcoin with them. I mean, I'm conscious that I don't want to get clients in and sort of bang them over the head with Bitcoin. I will have a discussion about it, because obviously I do let them know that they can pay in Bitcoin. That's sort of one of my features as a coach, which is probably sets me apart from, as far as I know, every other coach that I'm aware of. I don't think there's another coach certainly not in the UK that I'm aware of that accepts payment for sessions and for guidance and advice in Bitcoin in Sats. So I think that sets me apart a little bit. But I do have conversations. Some of my clients are business people, because they're not in sport, and they're just looking to get fit for themselves and for the health of the family and so on. And also some are in a certain age where they're kind of thinking they need to shave a few pounds off the belly as they get a bit older, as it does get harder.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I know too. But you've got to stick at it for sure. So I do have conversations, especially those that are in like I say, that are in business or own their own businesses already. They're quite open to conversations. I suppose it's because they are slightly more financially literate than the average citizen, because they're having to deal with these things in business. But I also, even just with players, like I'm not going to name any names, because I do like to keep that kind of secret, because they are, like I say, a lot of them are working in professional clubs and so on, is talking about them in terms of where they're putting their money, because some of them, as you'll be aware, at top level of sport are earning decent salaries. So I do kind of try and encourage them to allocate maybe a portion of what they're earning towards that, because as you may or may not be aware, footballers don't always have a great reputation of how they spend their money. I mean, there's quite a few instances out there where people don't end up very well financially after they finish playing.
Yes.
Because they've overindulged during the playing years, after getting significant sums of money for being sports people. So yeah, that's also a little bit of what I do with them. So that's I think.
For a sport person, it's very good to do the orange peel, because you need to tell them that it's not the life of you cannot work until you're 60 or 65. Your working period is short. Probably you make good money in this time, but it gets finished. So, and you need to live more. So most of them probably, if you are not a superstar and you don't manage correctly your finance, you can end up broke. I know many Argentinian players that were world champions, not like random players, world champion, and they ended up broke because they couldn't manage the finance. They think they're gonna get this money forever, but again, it finished.
Yeah, and listen, that's everywhere. It's not just Argentinian players. There's players, I certainly know quite a few over in this country. Again, I won't name any names, but there's quite a few in this country that have gone down the same path, like you say. Especially, I mean, the sort of the current crop and the money that's involved now. It's a little bit harder just purely because they are on such significant volumes of money that it's actually quite difficult to go bankrupt unless you're unbelievably irresponsible with your money. But players of sort of the generation of sort of the 90s, the early 2000s, or even players that are playing maybe sort of around the sort of championship, League One, League Two level, that aren't earning as much as that. There's a lot of players that have come unstuck with overindulging during the playing years, on particularly on assets that don't hold any value. Or don't keep any value and are just like one-off spends, so to speak.
Yes, and talking about the people who pays, how which percentage of your clients pay in Bitcoin, if you can say?
Yeah, I would say out of the clients that I work with, I'd probably say I'm about 5% at the moment. So it's not particularly high in terms of that. And again, sometimes I even have some clients that 1 week might pay in some sats, and then other weeks they're like, I'll just pay normal pounds. Or so it's it's not a high percentage. I think that just is kind of still a testament of where we're at in terms of Bitcoin at the moment. It's still I don't like saying this too much because everyone says this, we're still very early and so on. But I think in terms of where Bitcoin is potentially going to go in the future, we are still scratching the surface, really.
Yes. And do you offer any kind of discount if they pay with Bitcoin?
I do, yeah. I give them 10%. I give them 10% off if they pay in Sats. So I think that's pretty fair. Again, I just say to them, listen, I have to obviously deal with the volatility that potentially comes out of Bitcoin. So I've got to be able to manage that side of things. So I can't give it them for half price because that kind of devalues my work altogether. But yeah, I give them 10% off. So if somebody pays in Sats, I'll say like, whatever you want to pay, I'll take 10% off.
And any case of a client of yours that you orange pilled by telling them you can pay in Bitcoin and they start asking questions and you finally orange pill him or her?
Oh yeah, I've had a few. Probably I would say maybe eight or nine. I would imagine that I can think of over the past couple of years. Yeah, they're full Bitcoiners. Like once we got into it and they actually did their first transaction, set up a wallet and did the first transaction, they were pretty much I think they were blown away by it in a way, because they were like, so how does it work? And then you start asking questions, and then they ask more questions, and then, like I say, I always try and refer people to look at what I would class as people that know a lot more about Bitcoin than I do, because again, I don't go on here claiming that I'm a Bitcoin expert, because I'm not. I don't come from the generation of being a computer expert, never mind a Bitcoin expert. But I do understand the principles of the money, and this is the angle that I come at it from, is that I look at Bitcoin as a solution to a problem. Because obviously, if you look at history, we certainly do have a problem with a sound money that actually does last.
Yes, I think that if you understand the problem of money and you approach the people with Bitcoin as a solution, you are a Bitcoiner, and it's the best way to orange pill a new person. Because I think that if you come to the person and start talking, okay, I have Bitcoin, you can run a node, you can have your keys and all the things, people get like probably get scared of that. They say,
it's I think it's overwhelming.
That's the point. So I think that the best way to orange pill people is to tell them that they have a problem, show them the problem of money, and show them Bitcoin as a solution. Then all the technical aspects, they don't need to know. Of course, it's good to run a node. It's good to have a cold wallet. It's good to all the things that the Bitcoiners do. But to enter to Bitcoin, people need to understand the problem of money and Bitcoin as a solution, and then how it works. No problem. It's like now we are talking with the computer. We are using a streaming software to stream across X. You are in the UK, I'm in Hong Kong, and nobody of us knows how this system works. So, and we don't need to know how it works to use it.
No, and I think the other thing with that as well is like with most things. For example, again, the internet. We talk about the internet. People reference the internet a lot as a sort of shining example of it in terms of where Bitcoin is and so on. Is when we came through school in my era, there was a very basic education on the internet, very basic. It was literally a little bit around ones and zeros, and that was it. However, now children now especially in the UK, children now in the UK are starting to use software for coding. They're using iPads, laptops, phones. They're immersed in it from a very young age now. So the generations that are coming up and coming through, they're far more attuned to understanding the sort of concepts that come from Bitcoin and understanding the technology that runs and the different software layers and blockchain technologies and so on. And the more that we do that, eventually, and I'm not saying that this will definitely happen, but I can envisage it happening, is that at some point in school, Bitcoin will be taught as part of it. I mean, one of the problems that I would say with our education in the UK is there's nowhere near enough education around finance. I don't know whether that's on purpose because they just want workers. I don't know if that's the truth. Or whether it's just the fact that they want to focus on other things like mathematics, English, science, and so on. That tends to be what our education focuses on. But I do envisage a world in the future. It might not be, I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime or not, but I do envisage a world in the future where children will come through learning about blockchain technology, just like they did start to learn about coding and about the internet and about email and so on. I think it's like that. It's going to be the sort of the next evolution of usage of the internet, if that makes sense. I think that will. I think that will happen. I don't know how soon or how quickly that'll happen, but I can imagine it happening.
Yes, and talking about physical wellness and Bitcoin, do you see a connection between these two worlds? Because all the Bitcoiners that I met, they follow the same, like they do carnivore diet, they eat well, they train. Most of the Bitcoiners do that. Do you see a connection with the physical wellness and the Bitcoin world?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the whole thing with sort of physical wellness and to a degree mental wellness is a lot of it is self-controlled. So it's being able to have the skill sets and the right mental approach to sort of your physical health in terms of discipline, consistency, education, and also knowing sort of like what things to avoid. And Bitcoin is kind of replicates it in a way in terms of the fact that the things to avoid from an individual user point of view is having money taken from you just for the sake of using it. So whether it's you're sending like an international remittance and you're a big business and you've got one bank that moves the money from, say, America that takes a cut, then you've got the European bank that takes a cut, then it gets over to Asia and they take a cut of your money, and then it keeps happening over and over again. So it's like you kind of giving somebody else something for nothing really. They're not really having to do anything. The fact that it's actually your money and you're trying to send it and they're taking a cut of it, it doesn't seem very healthy to a business to have that be happening to you. So And I think a lot of the people in Bitcoin are very much about individual responsibility. There's a lot of people that are very self-motivated, also entrepreneurial in terms of wanting to be successful as individuals to then provide for their family and not being reliant upon somebody else or the state or the government to allow them to succeed in life and get forward and move forward with their lives and raise the families. And also, you don't always have to participate as well in some of the things that you might not agree with that are being taught maybe by your government or by your education system. You can kind of not necessarily opt out, so to speak, but you can sort of cater and recreate the environment that you want your family to experience growing up. And I think Bitcoin gives you an element of freedom to do that better than what the current system does. I don't believe that obviously we're totally like away from the government and we can totally disengage with the government altogether, because we're part of a society and we're part of a nation at the end of the day. And as much as I would criticize the government for many things, there are functions within government which are should probably stay and we are useful, especially in the UK. I mean, the National Health Service is one over in our country. I mean, I know it's not in every country, but for me, historically, that's something for us as a country to be very proud of and something that we should treasure, albeit I would criticise the management of said NHS over the past probably 20, 30 years, not being very well managed and very unwise spending patterns that have gone on over the years. So I think I think they do overlap with each other.
And what is how is the adoption in the UK, the general adoption of Bitcoin in the UK?
I think it's certainly on the up. I think it's certainly growing. Our government typically very, very slow. We are a slow-moving government, generally speaking, or we seem to be, especially around anything financial. There has been a few changes that I've read about around sort of like what they call ETNs, where they're sort of going to the FCA have started allowing ETNs. But then also, obviously, going on to smarter web company, as we mentioned before we come on, these sort of Bitcoin treasury companies that are now being able to sort of thrive in the country, I think is a real positive first step. And hopefully it will set a bit of especially smarter web will set a bit of a blueprint for others to follow. I mean, I know there's been quite a lot of companies that have popped up around the same time as smarter web company, but not necessarily being able to execute a sort of growth pattern in the same way that smarter web are doing with the different functions that Andrew and the rest of the team there are putting in place.
What do you think about the Bitcoin treasury companies for the ecosystem?
I think Bitcoin's for everyone. I think that's probably the truest thing to say about Bitcoin. Is it's a network that everybody should be able to access. Obviously, if you're a big business, you're probably going to be able to access it in a different way than an individual. You've got more wealth, etc., to more capital to allocate to Bitcoin in that regard. So you're going to participate slightly differently. However, with it being a global network, it's kind of it's less impactful on the network. Even if businesses do start adopting Bitcoin for individuals, all it will mean is that the sort of how we put the Sats value to pound value or Sat value to dollar value will just change over time in terms of how it looks in terms of a number on paper. But the adoption by businesses, I think, is a really good step, because one is the more people that get involved, the stronger the network gets. And then the other side of it is that if perception of Bitcoin is being adopted by companies which have some stature and some legitimization in the eyes of people, and governments and other companies, it can only really drive adoption further in terms of making them want to be part of it. It's just like allocating to the S&P 500. Every company wants to have an allocation there because they know that it's the top 500 companies that are in the US, and they want to be part of that, and that's a good product for them because over time it's been pretty good to everybody. And Bitcoin is similar to that, with just a very distinctive difference of being a capped supply. And that capped supply is probably the most intriguing factor into where Bitcoin will end up going, I think, going forward into sort of the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes, and how many treasury companies are in the UK? Because I know Smarter Web, of course, but there are a couple more.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you absolutely all of them. I do remember there's one, Concilium. I think Concilium are one of them. And then there's another one which begins with a V, which I can't bring to mind. I personally, having looked at them all, I bought Smarter Web quite early on, so I was pretty fortunate, really, because I couldn't invest in it other than through my pension, through my self-invested pension. That was the only way I could get involved in that, which I have done. And same with Concilium. I bought a little bit, not as much as Smart Web, but I bought a little bit of that. And I do think that going forward, whether I know that they've both kind of had quite a big downturn relative to the upturn from their launch of being IPO'd, I do think going forward in the long term that I think they've both potentially got. Well, I certainly think Smart Web's got a very bright future ahead of it. I think Andrew and the team that he's assembling there is going to really drive things forward, and I think it will be very similar to like what Metaplanet have done. I think they'll go in a very similar direction. And again, Andrew came out very early on with his strategy being a 10-year strategy. So I think that even though the downside for some people that maybe bought around the sort of £4 or £5 mark at the time, and it's now around 95p, that obviously will hurt your heart a little bit and hurt your stomach a little bit when you see it, as I'm sure we all can feel that way a little bit. But longer term, I think it's about they keep doing their thing and keep bringing value to what they're doing and keep accruing Bitcoin. And as long as they keep doing that, and Andrew's obviously looking at expanding his own actual web business as well on the back of it, and using kind of Bitcoin as a bit of an engine to do that with, it can only bode well for the future, really, because he's just going to grow a bigger business, which hopefully which has been a profitable business since he started it as well. And with his background being sort of the head of online at Hargreaves Lansdown, I don't know how much you know about Hargreaves Lansdown, but they're a huge company over here, managing pensions, etc., investments. I think it just bodes well for the future. I think we're in really good hands. He's at an age where he still looks like he's got a lot to give as well, Andrew. He's not an old man by any stretch, so he doesn't look like he's ready to retire to his retirement home anytime soon with his family. He looks like he's in it for the long haul in terms of wanting to really bring Bitcoin to the UK and sort of grow a business that he can be proud of, which I think he refers to quite a lot. He actually wants to be proud of it, and he's got some of his own family involved in the business, which tells you that he's obviously not just saying it from a sort of distant businessman point of view. He's actually saying it from a family home man point of view, which for me gives me a bit of confidence as well, because I am very much a home family man, and I want to invest in that company because I think it's got all of that potential in it.
Yes, no, Andrew. One of the things that I like that he's a Bitcoiner and he is one of us. That's what I like, because I had contact with other CEOs of the Bitcoin treasury companies and are different. I'm not saying that are better or are worse. They all are doing a great job. I've spoken with Alexandre Laisset from Capital B. I met I met Simon Gerlovich here in Hong Kong, but Andrew is totally different. He's like a Bitcoiner with their own, with his own family business, and he's doing this for Bitcoin. And he's super committed. He's super transparent. He's super humble. So I think that he's gonna succeed, and Smarter Web is gonna succeed. The only problem that I have with Smarter Web is that from Hong Kong I cannot invest in the company.
Well, Andrew and his team got something to work on, man. I'm sure it will happen at some point.
For sure, it's going to happen soon, and we are going to have Andrew. That's the other thing that I like from not only from Andrew, from most of the people, from the CEOs of the Bitcoin treasury companies. They are always open to talk in podcasts. They are always open to give information. And Andrew approached me a few weeks ago to be in our stream, and it's going to be this coming Tuesday 7th, 10 a.m. UK time. So of course, I hope all the guys of the group are gonna be watching it. But as I'm interviewing him and you are an investor in the Smarter Web company, I want to ask which thing you think they are doing great, which thing you think they can improve, and if you can drop any question to them, just let me know that I will ask.
Right. Okay. Good question. I think certainly one of the positive things, which I think you touched on there, which is not always the case from a lot of CEOs, is that Andrew is very open with his communication. He's from my experience of what I've read of what he's put so far, he's been probably more open and honest than a lot of CEOs would pass on to the public. And the fact that he does his weekly summary every week, which I think is great. It's almost being like in the business.
Yes. Let me tell something, because I want to put this to all the people to see how dedicated is. We went. I am sure you watched the video of me and him going around Hong Kong and me interviewing him.
I did. I saw it. Yeah.
So we were going in the Uber from after having lunch to the Peak, one of the iconic places in Hong Kong where you see all the city. And when we were going in the Uber, he was writing the tweet. So they were doing the Twitter, the summary. And he said, sorry, I have to do the summary because I do the summary every week. And he was doing in the middle of the taxi. And and in the night we were for dinner. I took him dinner to my favorite place in Hong Kong. And he was before going to dinner, sending messages to the new CFO. So he's 24/7 dedicated for the company.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, I mean, obviously I'm not on the inside, but he looks like he certainly put some hours into what he's doing, which is again is a testament to kind of his. It's a testament to kind of his. Very nice. It's a testament to his character, really. It shows you what he's about. He's up there every morning, very, very early, till very, very late, and he's doing his absolute utmost to try and make sure that the company is as successful as possible. Again, he's got skin in the game as well.
Yes.
As he's mentioned from a kind of a humorous point of view. I think he mentioned about his father-in-law or something like that being involved in the company, and he bought in at like £4 or something. So he's like, I better I'd make it a success, which made me laugh a little bit, but there is some truth to that as well. You do probably feel a little bit more responsibility when your family are involved as well.
Yes,
so
of course, yes, and also he told me many things that of course I'm not gonna reveal, because he told me this, don't tell anyone and don't put in the video, but a lot of things that are super positive, and you see how involved he is and his objective of not like doing this to make him super wealthy, but doing this for Bitcoin, for Bitcoin and for his community. I think that is the main goal of him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think like for the majority of people in Bitcoin, whether it's the individual or whether it's the business owner, I think the majority of them are in it because the idea around the money system, and a lot of these people are very knowledgeable in the finance industry already. It's like, you look like, again, I keep referencing Michael Saylor, but again, it wasn't like he wasn't operating in an unbelievably big company already. He was looking after MicroStrategy at the time, who were a huge company already in their own rights. But I think he sort of speaks around the fact that he wanted the sort of like the next challenge and the next legacy, and he was kind of almost at a bit of a loose end as to what his sort of legacy was going to be for him and his company. And I think he had one conversation with a colleague of his, I think it was Eric Weiss, I think it was, and he was saying, like, told him about Bitcoin, and all after he'd read up on it, just like we all do, he eventually was like, oh, this is it, and he's in it. Yeah, of course he's accruing wealth for his shareholders. Of course he's doing all them things, which at the end of the day, that's his responsibility. He's supposed to do that, but he's doing it from the background of that he sees Bitcoin as being a better future than the current future that we've got in the sort of the traditional finance system as it is at the moment. Which, again, if you do your history, which if you follow him, he's got a very, very good understanding around history. He reads aggressively, and he brings that through with his understanding around Bitcoin and why it is so important and why he has gone in so heavy with his company. Because at the end of the day, he didn't have to go in with his company to do Bitcoin. He could have just stayed where he was and carried on turning over a profit every year. But he convinced his board to be able to execute this strategy and bring in people to execute this strategy on the most grand scale you could possibly imagine. And eventually, at some point in time, he's either going to be proven to be totally true and totally right in his thesis, or for whatever reason, he's going to be proven incorrect, which if he does, I'm safe to say that I will also be incorrect with him. So hopefully that's not true, but I do believe that Bitcoin does offer a change in the pattern of history around money. I think it does. Excellent. I just think it's a kind of a bit of a one in a kind conception. And I know there's obviously loads of other blockchain technologies and companies and things that are available out there. And I'm not a total critic of all the other ones, even though I'm primarily Bitcoin. I don't overly criticize the other ones, because who's to say that they're not going to provide some future ability to do something that maybe Bitcoin isn't quite as good at or isn't really meant for. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you make sure that you're doing it in a way with integrity and you're not ripping people off and so on. But I am very much Bitcoin myself. That's where I sit.
Yeah, you are not a toxic maxi like me that I say every day anything not Bitcoin is a scam. So
yeah, I know. I know. I can understand why you would say that though, because sometimes I do feel like thinking like that a little bit, where I do think everyone's a scam. But then I think to myself, there's currently however many companies there are that we're operating in the traditional finance system, and there's a lot of good people that are involved in those companies, as well as which probably do have the right morals, values, and sort of integrity in terms of operating their business. Of course, there is the opposite side of that. Just like everything in life, there's people out there that are operating businesses where they are fleecing shareholders and then closing businesses and so on. That does go on. No doubt about it. But I think it applies the same to all these different blockchain projects. I think there's going to be one or two that are actually useful for whatever particular niche that they can do, but I think there's going to be many that just eventually over time will fade away into the distance and never to be heard from again. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know.
And any question you want to ask to Andrew, so I can ask?
I think he's doing a great job. There's not too many questions to ask at the minute. I think it would probably be maybe something around maybe like, does he sort of have any actual targets for maybe the end of the year, or what's his sort of, what would he class as being successful by the end of the year for the company?
Excellent.
Or even, is there any other sort of avenues for bringing in income that are sort of non-dilutionary that are available to him?
Okay, I will. I was putting this, so I had to do less job to prepare the question, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Sorry about
that. No problem. So to start finishing this conversation, I always do two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, how do you see the future of Bitcoin? Mostly, I think, in a philosophical way, in adoption way, not the price, not to say, oh, it's going to be 1 million, because we all know that Bitcoin is going to be 1 million someday.
Yeah.
But most open to philosophical ways.
Right. Good. I'm glad you said that, because I'm not a fan of throwing out numbers either. I don't really like doing that. From a philosophical point of view, again, I think we're scratching the surface in terms of where it can potentially go. I think there'll be resistance along the way, but I think just the technology in terms of what it is and how it runs, I don't think you can really stop it. I think it's gone way past the point of failing, so to speak. I don't ever see it going to zero like you might hear now and again or see on the internet. I think it's certainly going to continue to go up for the foreseeable future into probably the next decade or so. And again, I expect volatility. I think there will be volatility, probably more so than in traditional finance. It'll still remain volatile, but over time, I think that with more adoption, I see the volatility reducing in the sort of the amount it fluctuates.
Excellent. And the last question is, if you had the chance to meet Satoshi Nakamoto, what would you ask or say to him, her, or them?
What would I ask? I would probably ask what was the moment that when was the moment that you realized that you'd actually cracked Bitcoin? When was the moment that you realized that this thing actually was going to work?
It's a good question. It's a really good question for Satoshi. So yes, I think that they or he, in my opinion, is they. I think not they because it's a transgender. For me, is they because it's a group. Now, when I say they, it's not because I think that Satoshi is a transgender. That it's not problem if he was a transgender or whatever, but I think that it's a group of persons because to create something so perfect, you need to understand a lot of different areas of human knowledge that for one only person might be really difficult because you need to understand history, you need to understand economics, mathematics, coding, physics, philosophy, human behavior, sociology, but I think that when they created that, I think that they already know that what they were creating, and they already know what they are was gonna reach and how, because they already know before. I think they already know that the system was broken, something that most of us didn't understand until we understand Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real good analysis of it. I think that's probably very true. Again, I think it's somebody that certainly had a real good understanding of finance. Mm-hmm. So, real good understanding of finance and financial systems, but also the ability to do all the sort of the technical sides of writing the thing and the computer science side of it. I think for me, I agree with you. I can't see it being just one person. I think it was very much, I know there's a lot of talk around sort of like cypherpunks and so on, which again, I don't confess to be an expert on, but I agree that a group of people probably would be required to come up with something so beautifully put together and so profound as well. It's such a profound thing to come up with. I mean, wow. I mean, there's a lot of amazing technologies out there, but that potentially Bitcoin, if it does go the way that I think it'll go, which I hope it does go, it could solve so many problems across the globe, so many, and also take away so much tension out of society. I think there's so many tensions in society at the moment, which are driven primarily through money and through monetary systems and the pressures of money and so on. And obviously inflation's the silent but deadly one.
Yes, Larry, I think that the quote is from Larry Lepard, that is, fix the money, fix the world. And we have the tool to fix the world. And I will add another question, due that you are British and due that you are a football fan.
Indeed.
Yes, and you are a United fan like me. I'm a big fan of Manchester United. I cannot believe how. I hope United start becoming what was during the 90s on the 2000s, not how they are playing now. But the question is for next year, what would you choose? Bitcoin 1 million or England world champion?
Oh God, that's a question. That is. I've got to say Bitcoin 1 million. My family comes first. My family comes first. I'm sorry. My family comes first. I'd love England to be world champions more than anything, but family comes first.
Excellent. So 1 million Bitcoin and Argentina world champion would be amazing.
The Argentina world champion thing will probably happen anyway. So
I think that the favorite is Spain, but England had a great team. I remember the team on 2018 was a really good team. And I thought that you were going to do better in the last World Cup in 2022. But what you met France and Harry Kane missed the penalty and all the things happened.
Yeah, this is football though. This is what it's what it's about. I mean, we've got a lot of good players and we've got a really good squad and we've got good young players coming through, but so have all the other countries. It's so competitive now. Football across the globe, so competitive. So many good players out there and so many good teams.
And so many good teams. And that's the magic of football, and that's why it's so beautiful. So, Andy, thank you very much for being here today. Anything else you want to add and how people can contact you?
Yeah, well, firstly, I just want to say pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me on, Fernando. It's been great speaking to you. Hopefully we get to do it again at some point in the future. Just in terms of where to find me, I pretty much for sort of the coaching, guidance, etc. that people might want if they want to become one of my clients and they want me to work with them on trying to make progress in whatever way that might be, whether it's physically or mentally. I'm on the SatsCoach on X. That's the only platform I use. I don't use YouTube or anywhere like that currently. I just stick to X at the moment. I don't really have the capacity in terms of time to do all the other ones, if I'm honest. So I'll stick to that. And then, by all means, if anybody wants to get in touch or they want to get any questions over to me that they want me to answer, feel free to DM me, and I'll come back to you as quick as I can.
Excellent. And you do the coaching presential, or you also do online coaching?
I do both. Yeah, I do both. So if you're obviously not in the UK and you want to have some form of coaching, whether that's guidance around physical well-being and sort of improving your fitness and so on, or whether it's around your mental health, if there's sort of things that you kind of maybe having a bit of a sticking point with and you need to maybe have a chat with somebody about it around how you might rethink it. I do quite a lot of work with people around that side of things. And I don't just do it off the cuff. I do have some training in those things as well. So it's not just me saying that.
Excellent. Again, Andy, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. And I hope to catch up again in another chat in the future.
Absolutely, Fernando. If you're ever back over, we'll get to a game.
Of course. I've been only one time in Old Trafford. I have the picture with Matt Busby outside, but never went to watch a match of the Man U. So that's something. And I love, when I was younger and I was living in Argentina, every Saturday morning I used to wake up and put the Premier League. I love the Premier League. So
Yeah,
the crowded stadium, it's amazing. So bro, I would, if I go one time to Manchester, of course, I will let you know, and you will take me to watch a game in the Theater of Dreams.
Yes, no problem at all with that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And
thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, give us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media, because with these simple actions, you support us. We don't want money. We don't want Bitcoin. We just want follow, a like. You can comment in the video if you want to add some questions for Andrew Webley or for other guests. If you want us to explain different things, or if you have anything to say that we are not doing good, just let us know as well. This is the best way to improve. So share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we must reach 8 billion people and onboard them to Bitcoin. See you in the next episode of our podcast. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember,